Hello, everyone. Today's big question is a doozy. We've had requests on Instagram to cover this topic, and we're ready to dive in. We also wanted to say a quick hello to our guest today. We have Sophia back with us. We love having her as a guest because she tends to bring a different angle to a lot of the questions we have. So she's an extra host today. Welcome back, Sophia.
Sophia.
Hi. It's good to be back.
Okay.
Welcome back.
Well, let's ask the question, how do I know I'm being abused?
Jill, this question is brilliant and it's hard to answer for two reasons, really. First, I think it's hard to even imagine that somebody that you love and who is supposed to love you and says they love you would abuse you, could abuse you, is abusing you. It's heartbreaking, and it makes even asking this question almost unimaginable for most people. And two, if you can get to the point where you ask yourself this question, it's nearly impossible to figure out the answer. Emotional abuse lasts so long because not only is it confusing, but it flies usually just under the radar. So it is really difficult to detect, and it's more about the consistency and persistence of the behaviors than the behaviors themselves. So you end up feeling like you can't trust your instincts. And Jill, what comes to your mind when you hear this question?
Yeah, exactly what you said. Not trusting yourself, or thinking that like with me, it was not even being worthy to call what I was experiencing abuse. Any quote unquote abuse I experienced, it was my fault.
I also want to add that sometimes if you're raised in more of a traditional household or a religious background, a lot of times I think as having a parent who's a predator, it's almost ingrained that we're supposed to listen or love or obey your parents. And so you may not know that some of that language can be abusive or that the parents are being abusive because maybe they're just disciplining you.
I think for me, extending off of what you just said, yes, I didn't have the knowledge to acknowledge what was going on for me. I think language is so important in how it creates a construct, and I didn't have the language of abuse. So because I wasn't around it, I didn't recognize it. I started to interpret the information and the experiences of my life through things like Jill said, like it may be if I get better, or this could be a me problem, or I just didn't recognize the signs, even though looking back, they were all there.
Yeah, they're all there, but because you don't know what you're looking at and you don't have words for what you're looking at, it makes it so hard to see them, which is why we're here today, to help people be aware of them.
I think we need to remind our listeners of Sophia's story. And I can't remember, did you know pretty quickly, Sophia, that something was off in your relationship?
I think, again, I was experiencing things that were off, but I didn't have the language to recognize it or to have awareness or define what was going on. So for me, it was a lot more like a frog in a pot, like things were happening, but I didn't recognize the abuse at the time, even though I was married for 25 years. Would you guys think that there is a way to have like a little checklist in someone's mind, or a way to say, hey, these 5 things would be signs of abuse? If it's your partner, a parent, a friend, identifying patterns, then if I see these 5 things, I could consider whether there's abuse or whether I'm being abused. I know for a lot of us, a big reason these relationships lasted for so long was because of a lot of denial, shame, and like I said in my experience, I didn't have the language. What do you think? Can we feel a commonality in our stories? Do we think that predators are willing to admit some of the abuse?
I think sometimes predators are proud of the abuse.
At the end of my relationship with my predator, at which time my predator was being called out for abusive behavior, he took that and he told everyone that he met that people were calling him abusive, and like he used that to try and paint himself as a victim. Isn't it fascinating?
So you call out your predator, and then their response is to see how victimized I am.
Yeah, that's right.
In my case, the predator, even in a public setting, etc., made him look all the more vulnerable.
Yeah.
All the more heart connected, self-aware, so willing to be humble and honest about the mistakes and how much he's growing as a person, and every woman being jealous that this man is the man who's willing to own his behavior and grow and change and do all the things. But he had all the words and none of the actions.
And that is really, it's really disarming.
Yeah. It became more gaslighting of a community to isolate me even further in the abuse.
Well, because you look so unforgiving.
Yeah.
Right?
Why is she so angry? Look at what he's sharing.
Mhm.
This is so great. So we have, not in the sense of the story, but it's great for us having the listeners understand that maybe you may not realize you're being abused. And when you do call them out on little things, they will admit to some level. But how do we know we are being abused? I think we need to go through, we have, I think, 5 points.
Yeah, PJ, give us the first.
I think the one thing that came up for all of us really profoundly was eggshell walking, because you are pretty aware of eggshell walking, even if you're not, even if that word hasn't come to your lips. I remember watching Sleeping with the Enemy. It's a movie with Julia Roberts. It's an oldie, but a kind of goodie. And she's trying to align the towels just right, because the fear is he's going to come home and criticize her and be angry because she didn't do something properly. That eggshell walking is really profound. What about you guys?
I can remember like eggshell walking was a regular kind of feeling that I carried. And it was something simple like we have to get to church on time. Being late was not an appropriate optic. And so feeling so much pressure in getting 3 kids ready for church and the dress and the shoes, and having, if we were even 1 minute late, knew that there would be an explosive type of reaction. And so I had so much anxiety anytime we had to like leave the house. For example, I remember one morning we were running late, and all of a sudden it was one little girl who has to have the sparkly shoes. We've all been there, right? And we're trying to find the sparkly shoes. And all of a sudden it's an absolute rage. It's yelling. Shoes are flying and being thrown. The whole shoe bucket is dumped. Don't care. Put these shoes on. Get in the car. And then we're all in the car finally. We've got whatever shoes. Can't remember if we ever did find the sparkly shoes. But by the time we're in the car, everyone is their nervous system is just like, we're all tweaking. And it's the silent, dead silent ride. And the kids are scared. And then we arrive. And guess what? It's performance time.
Right.
We're all happy. We're all here. This is going to be like, let's go, kids. Come on. Like nothing ever happened.
Yeah.
For sure. I remember for me, it's something simple like the absolute fear I had in sending a text to my predator, something like, are you taking the kids to soccer tonight? Well, I couldn't just text that because this word would be wrong. This word would be inappropriate. This word would be accusatory. And I just remember it would take me a half an hour to type out a text that should have just taken me 10 seconds because I lived in absolute fear of being attacked because I couldn't even correctly phrase a text.
If I could just summarize that first one, there's this thing going on in our nervous system in the presence of that predator that should be an alarm bell. So that first tell, if you will, connected to eggshells is that I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling afraid. I'm feeling uneasy. And especially when there's no words being said, but you can feel that energy in the room and how it's controlling how your internal workings are and how you're relating to yourself and them. I think that's one sign for sure that there's abuse in that relationship.
Absolutely nailed it. Second point, we talked about this, protecting the predator. So when you find that you are starting to behave in ways where you're maybe not sharing what the predator is doing behind the scenes, and not to hide, but just so people don't stop liking the person or to make sure that their reputation isn't hurt.
I know with me, my predator would say, this person did this and they hurt me. This person slammed the door in my face when really they didn't. But it was up to me to go to that person and say, I can't believe what you did to my predator. Yeah.
So you would actually confront them?
Yep. How dare you do this to him?
Did you really?
Yeah. And I was such a mousy person, but if you crossed him, I went after you.
You know, the way that I protected my predator was that I did not share the level of abuse or the things that were happening. I would tell enough to try and shore up a little bit of us emotional support, but I felt like I had to keep a bridge to him. And I think that has a lot to do with trauma bonding, that I didn't want to sever the relationship and the things that he was doing. Anyone who is remotely healthy would say, get out. This is an abusive relationship. So I didn't want that kind of feedback. So I found myself isolated. And, you know, I would challenge listeners, you're listening to this, and ask yourself this question. Do you feel free to tell the truth about your emotional experiences, your encounters with your partner or a family member or whoever it is that you identify as a difficult relationship? Or are you being dishonest on some level and isolating yourself to protect that predator? Because for me, it took therapy and way after the exit of the relationship before I actually told the truth about the darkest stories, the most difficult parts of the abuse, because I wanted to keep that bridge. And I knew it would be, I'd have to sever it if anybody knew what was really happening. And what does it say about me that I know all of these things, and I didn't leave?
Right.
So there's that shame piece as well that keeps you in isolation.
The shame that holds you in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a powerful wrap up of that. I think number 3 is something not totally, was not maybe fully true for all of us, but I think we decided to label it our third one. Was we kind of talked about screaming from the inside. This is a sense that you have where on the outside you're behaving in one way, but on the inside you feel completely a different way. For you guys, did you have any screaming on the inside? Did you have any kind of that sort of thinking where your body was trying to speak for you?
I wasn't screaming, but I think I prayed ad nauseum for my marriage, and the prayer. It became, I guess the prayer became my scream.
Okay, like almost like a magical thinking.
A magical thinking, absolutely. And there's one book I want to tell. I want to tell people out there, please do not read it. But
tell it, yes.
Okay, Power of a Praying Wife, Stormy O'Martian. Never
burn
read
it.
That book. Sorry, Stormy.
No, we're not sorry.
No, we're not sorry. Sorry,
I
not
think
sorry.
that book and a lot of religious cultures has done a tremendous amount of damage.
Yeah. What I believed was that the only way to fix my relationship with my predator was through divine or superhuman, supernatural, a divine touch. I believed that God could heal. I chose to trust that God could heal. And I'm not saying that God can't. However, I chose to pray and pray and pray and pray and highlight and highlight and highlight.
Would it be almost like a mantra or like a script or even an incantation?
But it was all the time, 24/7.
Yeah.
And the core of that book was that it was like a bait and switch. It's like the Power of a Praying Wife. You're going to learn how to pray to change your circumstances.
Yeah.
But the hook was the real prayer is God change me. And that's where it became victim abuse. And I think of that book for myself. My ex had a relapse once again, looking at pornography, etc. And someone gave me that book, said, you need to read this book. Well, by the time I started diving into that book, I felt so guilty for being upset at his betrayal that I ended up praying for myself to change, to be more loving, to be more forgiving. And I actually washed his feet for abusing me because I reacted instead of being loving and understanding with his little problem.
That makes me
for
crazy.
Anybody who's listening who's not coming from an evangelical background, washing the feet is actually literal. This is something a lot of churches will do, where there's a literal ceremony or thing that we do where we actually wash people's feet. So when she says that, it's not a figurative thing.
I literally bowed at his feet with a basin of water, put my hands on his feet, and asked him to forgive me for not being loving in my response to his betrayal.
His abuse.
And then I think about what was going on and the confusion inside of me, because I also felt betrayed. I felt rage. I felt hurt. But I also felt like you're not allowed to have these feelings. These feelings are the wrong feelings.
They're bad.
And you need to fix it and pray more, right? Read that prayer out loud. Keep trying to pray that God would change me, because clearly there's this tension inside of me that I feel outraged. The truth is I feel outraged, but I don't have any place for that voice or any space to express that. So it goes inward. It always turns inward. And that's when you get your anxiety and stress and headaches and tummy aches and all the things, and how we deny that inside voice.
Well, I think even Gabor Mate talks about you should welcome your children to be angry. And I do think, like for myself, the screaming inside, I do. And I get it to this day. If somebody is talking at me rather than with me, there's an inside voice that's just like, shut up. And maybe because I just wasn't allowed to speak as a child, I was shut down. And my anger made my mother angrier. So if I was angry, she could top me.
Okay, hold that thought for number 5.
Yes.
Let's do number 4, because
Okay, give us number 4.
I want that. That's such a good one for number 5. So
Okay,
let's not
so
give it
let's
up.
go to number 4, and then we'll touch on number 5.
Number 4, we talked about being obsessing, and this kind of touches on a little about Sophia, what you're talking about, obsessing over self-improvement, because a lot of times your predator has told you so many times, has really, done you the great favor of labeling all the areas you need to improve, and where
what's wrong with you?
Yeah, where you fail.
Why do you feel that way? What's wrong
where
with
you suck, where you fail, where you have displeased them, or where you don't measure up. And so you begin a campaign of wanting to do your own work. Yeah.
How many books can we read so that we can be better communicators? So we can know the 5 love languages and make sure that we love them in the right language. And we put all of this pressure on ourselves that maybe if I could love you better, you would be better.
For me, it wasn't even like love you better, because my predator is my mother. It's more of how can I be less fucked up? Ultimately, I'm grateful for my wanting to learn and grow and interest in different things. I think that's all a great thing. But if it comes at the expense of there's something wrong with me, and so I've got to read these books, it can be a little obsessive and not fun.
Yeah.
Learning should be fun.
I remember once I had the audacity to start taking a course. It was called Betrayed Hearts. I don't know if it still exists today. It comes out of the fundamentalist evangelical movement. And it was essentially a way for women to, quote unquote, heal their hearts after having experienced infidelity.
So is it just women?
Yes. It was just for women. And
I'm not proud to admit that I was the facilitator of that.
Thanks a lot, Sophia. Anyway, I told my predator that I was taking this course, and he was so angry with me. And it was because he could not believe that I would take a course that would insinuate that he would have the issue instead of me working on myself. He told me the only thing that I could do to make this relationship better is to work on myself.
I was a facilitator of Betrayed Heart.
That's how I met you.
Exactly. And when I think back of the content of that, the irony was, again, it was taking the responsibility and placing it on the victim, placing it on the one that is betrayed to heal her own heart through forgiveness, through prayer, through working things out, and then learning how to not be codependent, set appropriate boundaries. And those things are true. But when you put them in the larger context, it became victim blaming again. And so I look back on that. I ended up actually rewriting the course, and that's the course that did not help women.
Well, and it sounds like it did a lot of damage. Yeah. And yet we're all trying to do our best within a system that keeps reframing traumatic abuse and coercive control as normal, as acceptable. And it's not it's not the abuser's job. It's not the rapist's job to stop raping you. It's your job to not wear red panties.
Exactly.
right? Like, or low
Exactly.
cut shirts, or drink too much, or go to the
Exactly.
wrong parties, or walk in the wrong area.
Mhm.
I mean, we've got such a deep culture of victim blaming.
Yes.
And this is more of the same that's infiltrated and promoted through religious institutions is gaslighting within this entire paradigm is just brilliant, right? Like, so you're actually trying to improve something in your life and you're gaslit to be not that. Don't improve in
How
that area.
dare you insinuate that I have an issue?
How dare you?
I remember I took because I have a performing background, I took this class in performance and business. Anyways, the teacher, it was on me, and I was talking about, well, I just want people to see me, and da, da, da. And she finally just goes, you need to stop reading self-help books. And I remember kind of being like, oh, but I need to prove. But I really honor what she said to me, because what she was saying was, there's nothing wrong with you.
Mhm.
Because I came to her with this paradigm in my head. There's something wrong with me. So can I come to you and you're going to fix me? I'm paying. And she was just like, there's nothing wrong with you.
Well, and isn't there a fundamental flaw in the belief there's something wrong with you, as opposed to there's an area that you might want to grow in?
Totally.
Because I think there's always an area for all of us that we want to grow in. And that comes from a deep place of life-givingness. Like it's a wonderful thing.
And it's fun.
And it's fun, as opposed to I'm bad, I'm wrong, I'm stupid. I need to grow in this area, because if I don't, I won't have value. I won't be good for anything. That's really different than a space of like, hey, there's some areas I'd really like to improve and grow and move toward. It's a completely different experience.
Even hard therapy, I would argue, yes, it's hard, but there is a certain degree of fun in it, in the sense of freedom and learning about yourself, and you come away empowered. It might be hard, it might be triggering, it might be whatever, all these things, but there is, I would say there's a bit of pleasure, and I think that's a good sign then it's not, right?
I think, it's pretty close to that, but not exactly. I think what this kind of obsessing over self-improvement did for me is it kept me hopeful. So as long as I could get a book, a lot of the stuff I focused on was things like, like how to improve your marriage without talking about it, or, or without
Don't
talking
talk
to your
him about it.
spouse. Yeah. A lot of the stuff that I looked at was, if you change yourself, you will change the dynamic in your relationship.
Right.
And
It was all on you.
And there is some truth to that.
Yeah.
That's the irony.
That's and that's why we talk about like the missing chapter in a lot of these books. A lot of times there is a lot of truth to that, but there is a certain element of the society that this is not true for. It won't matter how much you change, how much you grow, how absolutely loving, patient, kind, supportive you are. The other person is not able or interested in loving you. There's a quote by Brene Brown. One of the hallmarks that she talks about is it has to come from both people. And I feel always like highlighting that part and how profound that is, that it's in there. She doesn't assume that it's true for everyone. And I think that's where I kind of like, as long as I could learn a new technique, as long as I could have a new therapist to grow in, as long as I could get better in a certain area, it just kept giving me hope. Maybe, Jill, how like you prayed, like it gave you hope at some level.
Yeah, I desperately need it.
Yeah. So
It's something to do. It feels empowering.
Yeah.
It's like, well, now I have something to do. I can
pray.
Practice these communication skills. I can get better at doing this.
If you think about what the alternative is, I either can give up and recognize that I'm with a predator. And that will mean the loss of my mom, the loss of my dad, maybe my whole family, my partner, my husband, my wife, my children, court, my home, finances. I can either imagine and let my brain go there, or I can have a new technique. And because your brain doesn't even go to the predatory place, you're kind of left with, I can learn a new technique. That could be helpful. And so there's these profound elements. And there is not a lot of places that you can go to read about this. So you open up a marriage book, it doesn't say, hey, if you're being in an abusive situation, don't read this book. We've got a blog post on that. The marriage book says, hey, you can change. Everyone can change. And you don't even need your partner to help you change. I say bullshit.
Yeah.
Yes, you can influence and impact the relationship. But what they don't say is there are some times where that is going to require you leaving the relationship, because that is the only way that you will improve this relationship.
I do remember there was a minister on a podcast who said, was it Phil Driscoll?
Mark.
Mark Driscoll. Anyways, Mark Driscoll said, wives, don't talk to your husbands about what's going on. If there's something that he's doing, pray about it.
Yeah, I hate that.
Pray about it and it will change, because God will speak to his heart. And I just remember thinking, oh, that's what you do. That's what you do. And then years later, it was like, I think what this is doing is like telling people to shut up, work on yourself.
Well, that's
Anyways.
exactly what it's doing.
Yeah.
Anyways, number 5.
So number 5, I think on our list is the fact that we are, as prey, are not to be reactive to our predator. We are not allowed to react in the same way that they do for us or do to us. I know with my parent, she would get very rageful, and her rage would overpower my anger. So my anger could never overtop that. So I just didn't. And I was never allowed to express. So I think when I was being talked at, internally I would scream, because I would never be allowed to react. Even to this day, if I'm to have a really good, say if she's betrayed my boundary, I have to look for the gentlest bit eggshell walking in order to approach the conversation, to make it, because I'm in relationship with her, we still have to have a conversation. And I need to honor myself in having that conversation, because part of me just doesn't want to, but I know it's important for me. So I do it, but I have to be so stoic in my appearance. I can't be reactive, because if I am reactive, that will set her off. I have to be almost stoic.
It's almost like we can't be safe.
Well, we're definitely not safe.
Yeah.
I learned very early in my marriage to not confront. I can remember a time when we were in the car, kids are in the car, and I started to bring up an issue, like carefully. Again, I'm reading my books on communication. I'm giving all the effort I can to bring an issue to light. And I remember him just taking a fist and punching the roof of the car and saying, "Shut up, woman." And I was actually so afraid to share because of those experiences. And then the next time I attempted to, even just gently, our car was breaking down. We were on a road, and I said, the car is not working. The transmission just went on a big hill and it was skipping. I'm like, well, maybe we need to call someone or walk, get help. And again, the punch and "Shut up, woman." He flew the car into reverse, turned the car backwards, and came up the hill with the car moving backwards with my children in the vehicle. So I was terrorized at that point, and I learned very quickly that it was not a safe place to say what I was feeling. I could share my thoughts if everything was peaceful, calm, and I was super careful in wordsmithing sometimes, but you never know when it's safe to share, because we don't know always the inner workings. So I learned very quickly I was not allowed to react, because if I responded back in that same frequency, vibe, whatever, matched his energy, it's going to go through the roof.
Yeah.
But it's so fascinating that there's no place you're not allowed to get angry, because anger would mean you had value. Like a healthy person, when their spouse gets angry, they kind of back down. Maybe I crossed a line. I'm sorry. They want to heal it, but it incites the predator.
The prey is not allowed to get angry. The predator is.
Well, that became my new source of self-help books, was how to deal with my anger. And so I became a master at controlling anger, controlling emotions to the degree, over practice over the course of those years, that I was never reactive and felt quite proud of that.
Right. Yeah.
And so in therapy, post separation, my therapist literally is like, you have to learn to find anger again, because anger is a sign that someone is violating your boundaries.
Yes.
And so it took me time.
Well,
I had scream therapy. You got to yell it. You got to write it. You got to swear it. And I literally had to practice letting my emotions come to the surface, because I had become so skilled at submerging and suppressing.
And it's
everything.
also a sign that you can feel.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because if we suppress, we can't feel. I know Brene Brown says, you are worthy of love and connection. And we also should say we are worthy of love, connection, and safety.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
we absolutely should.
Yes.
And, we could talk about this all day. If you haven't listened yet, we'd encourage you all to go check out our other episode called Creating a Language for Emotional Abuse. If you are beginning to ask yourself, am I being abused? That episode will give you a bit of a better understanding about what you may be experiencing.
Thanks for checking out this episode, everyone. Until next time,
See ya.
see ya.
See you.
Real quick, we're also doing a draw where one of our listeners who leaves a rating and review will be entered to win a Visa gift card and a book about navigating this type of abuse. So anyone who leaves a rating and review, remember to do both or it won't count, anytime before March 31st will be entered to win a $50 gift card and will receive a book from our preferred reading list. So head on over now before you forget.